In the sun-drenched land of the pharaohs, the family formed the very core of society, a value so profound that even their gods were arranged in family groups. Within this structure, children were deeply cherished and considered a great fortune. The birth of a child, particularly a boy, was a cause for great celebration. However, the early years were fraught with peril. Infant mortality was tragically high, with diseases and the lack of modern medicine meaning many did not survive their first year. To ward off evil spirits and protect their precious offspring, parents would bestow upon them names with hopeful meanings and adorn them with protective amulets such as the Eye of Horus. For the first few years of their lives, children were doted upon by their mothers, who rarely left their sight. This period of early childhood, until about the age of 4 or 5, was a time of relative freedom and play. The primary responsibility of a young child was simply to learn to walk, talk, and engage in games that would build their strength and agility. It was a carefree existence, but one that would soon transition into a life of increasing responsibility, guided by the strict social structures and gender roles of ancient Egyptian society. The world of a child: home, play, and early learning. Flat perspective. The figures and objects lack realistic depth and are depicted in a relatively flat, two-dimensional manner, characteristic of pre-Renaissance art. Life for a child in ancient Egypt was shaped immeasurably by their family's social standing. The vast majority of the population were farmers, and their children's lives were intrinsically linked to the rhythms of the Nile and the agricultural seasons. From a young age, these children would begin to learn the family trade by observing and assisting their parents. Boys would accompany their fathers to the fields, while girls would shadow their mothers in managing the household. Regardless of social class, play was an essential part of an Egyptian child's life. Archaeologists have discovered a wide variety of toys that would be familiar to children today. These include leather or papyrus balls stuffed with straw or horsehair, spinning tops, and marbles. Dolls were also popular, particularly among girls, and were often made of cloth stuffed with papyrus reeds. Wealthier children might have more elaborate toys, such as carved wooden animals with movable parts, like a crocodile with a snapping jaw, or a horse on wheels. Board games were a beloved pastime for both children and adults. The most famous of these was Senet, a game of strategy involving moving pieces across a board, which was so important it was often included in tombs for entertainment in the afterlife. Outdoor activities were also common, with tomb paintings depicting children wrestling, boxing, playing a form of street hockey, and swimming in the Nile. In terms of appearance, young children often went without clothing until the age of 6, a practical measure given the hot climate. A distinctive feature of childhood was the sidelock of youth, a single braid of hair grown on the right side of an otherwise shaved head, which was worn by both boys and girls until puberty. Even without clothes, children were adorned with jewelry such as bracelets, anklets, and protective amulets. Pathways to adulthood, education, and apprenticeship. Around the age of 4 or 5, a more formal path to adulthood began. For the majority of children, this did not involve formal schooling. Instead, they would enter into an apprenticeship with their parents, learning the skills of their trade through hands-on experience. A farmer's son would learn to plow the fields and tend to the livestock, while a craftsman's son would be trained in his father's workshop. Similarly, girls learned the essential skills for running a household, including cooking, sewing, and managing domestic affairs from their mothers. The transition to adulthood, rites of passage, and new responsibilities. Boys tended to be slightly older when they married, as they were expected to be able to support a family. For most, marriage was a social and economic arrangement, often organized by the parents. Marriage often occurred at a young age, particularly for girls, who might marry around the age of 12 to 14. Boys tended to be slightly older when they married, as they were expected to be able to support a family. For most, marriage was a social and economic arrangement, often organized by the parents. Upon reaching adulthood, the roles and responsibilities that children had been training for became their reality. Sons were generally expected to follow in their father's footsteps, inheriting their trade and social position. It was also the eldest son's duty to care for his parents in their old age and to ensure they received a proper burial, a sacred responsibility in Egyptian culture. Daughters, upon marriage, would take on the management of their own households. They inherited household goods like furniture and jewelry from their parents. The journey from the cherished yet perilous days of infancy to the structured responsibilities of adulthood was a well-defined path for the children of ancient Egypt. It was a life shaped by family, social class, and deeply ingrained cultural traditions. A world where play and learning were intertwined, and where every child was prepared from a young age to take their place in the enduring society of the Nile Valley.